I'm here to talk about how I did a makeover on my dresser. So today I'm going to be talking about how I stained my furniture. So right here, this dresser was not originally this gray slate color. It was more of a golden yellowish wood. It wasn't ugly. It was just a little bit outdated. And it really did not go with my room. My room has a lot of blues and pastel colors and a little accent of pink. So it stood out in my room. It wasn't cohesive. It did not look good. So I wanted to either get rid of them or do something to make it match. So I decided to keep it because I had this furniture for a while and it's really sturdy and strong. The front is made out of solid wood. Later I found out that the top and the sides have veneers, but it's still a really decent and sturdy dresser, and I didn't see the need to go out and spend a bunch of money on other dressers when I had perfectly good dressers at home that just needed a little bit of love, needed just a little bit of adjustment to make it work for my room. The first thing I did is decide where I was going to start sanding my project. I decided to start sanding in my room in front of my TV. I put down a towel and then a plastic trash bag on the floor and started sanding on top of that so it could catch all the debris from the sanding. I decided on my room because that way I was able to watch TV while I was sanding. It did take me about 2 to 3 hours to sand each drawer, so this was the best thing for me to keep me entertained and make time go by fast. Preferably you can do it in a garage if you have good lighting. I didn't have good lighting in my garage. That is why I opted to do the sanding in my room. I only did the dresser drawers in my room, however, and I did the rest of the dresser, the base, outside because I didn't want to make a big mess in my room and I wanted more space to navigate when I was sanding. After that, I started removing the handles. You want to remove all the handles or the knobs from your dresser so that you have a clean space to be able to sand and do everything you needed. So I set those aside so that if I decided to use them later, they were there. You can also decide to purchase new knobs depending on your project. I use Murphy oil soap to clean my furniture because that is what I had available. It is recommended to use TSP soap. You can also use water and vinegar solution if you don't have any soap available. So I just put some of it in water and use a small towel to wipe down the furniture. This is a very important step that you want to do before you start sanding because it's going to remove any dirt and debris that may have been collecting over time during use of your furniture. So you want to wipe it all down, and that way when you start sanding, it's not going to create any dents or nicks from the dirt that's on your wood. Because my dresser was old, it had a lot of imperfections and missing wood pieces, so I used plastic wood filler. I chose the one that changes colors once it's dry. That way I knew when it was ready to be sanded. So this one is a bright pink color when you first apply it, and then once it's dry, it dries a natural wood finish, letting you know that it's ready to sand into the right shape. So I applied it onto my furniture wherever there was missing wood and really bad dents. I applied it with my fingers and then I used a knife to go ahead and make sure it was sticking on and it was nice and tightly placed into the missing pieces. This particular wood filler advised to put layers of 1/8 of an inch. So I did end up putting 2 layers to get the depth that I needed. I had to let it sit for a couple of hours before it was dried up. Once it's dried, it does have just a natural wood finish, and I was able to sand it down into the shape that I needed so that I would be able to stain it and the dresser wouldn't have any holes or missing pieces. I used Tack Cloth to clean the drawers before I started the stain. I did use a towel, a moistened towel, to clean first to get all the big pieces left over from the sanding. Then I waited for it to dry, and then after that I used the Tack Cloth to remove the smaller pieces of sanding. left over. I don't recommend just using the tack cloth right away because you're going to have to use a lot of tack cloth and it's going to be very difficult. So just first wipe it with a towel and then use a tack cloth to remove the leftover little debris that the towel didn't get to. This next step is optional. It is to condition the wood with the pre-stain. Especially if you're using a soft wood, you really do want to condition it. So I used a brush to wipe it on. The conditioner is going to make the stain go on smoother. You're not going to get a lot of blotchiness on the wood. So it's just an added step to make it look smoother and have a nicer finish. Now this is optional, so if you don't have the budget or you want to save some money, you can leave this out, especially if you want a weather look or if you're going for darker. But I did want to make sure that the dresser did look nice and smooth, so I did use this on the drawers. When I did the dresser, I forgot to use the conditioner and I just went into straight staining. I didn't notice too much of a difference between the drawers that were conditioned and the dresser that wasn't. But that might be because I used 4 coats of the stain. I'm not sure. There was a slight little difference. The drawers did look a little bit smaller, but not anything noticeable. I used some staining pads and also a shop towel. So you are going to need 2 things. One to wipe on the stain and then a second to wipe off the excess. So you don't need a staining pad. I just purchased one because I didn't have a towel to use, but if you have 2 separate towels, you can use that. Just make sure that they are lint free so they don't leave behind residue on your furniture. So I went ahead and used my staining pad to initially put on the stain, and then I used the towel to wipe it off. Use the instruction on your stain because mine said to leave it about 3 to 5 minutes before I wiped it off. Here you can see how it looks with just 1 coat of stain. It is still very sheer and you can see the wood underneath. This is perfect if you want more of a weather look. I did not want a weather look, so I went ahead and added a second coat on the dresser, and you can see here it did add a lot more coverage. You can still see some of the wood peeping out underneath, so it still has a little bit of a weather look, but it was still very pretty. I did not like the wood peeping through, so I decided to add an additional coat. So now you can see that this is after 4 coats. With 4 coats, I was able to get the desired look. With 3 coats, it looked decent, but where the detailed was of the shell on the top drawer, I could still see a lot of the wood underneath because I wasn't able to sand it down to the wood just because it was very small spaces. So that's why I had to use so many coats, mainly because of that decor in the middle. It had to be filled, and with 3 coats a lot of it peeped through, so the 4th coat did the trick, and I did make it a little bit thick on the 4th coat to make sure that it was covered. I used Polycrylic Protective Finish as a top coat after I let the stain sit for 24 hours, which is what was recommended by the product. So I did it the next day. I added a top coat. It is recommended to do 2 to 3 coats, and you must wait 2 hours in between each. And after the final coat, it is recommended that you wait at least 24 hours before normal use of your furniture. So this is me applying it. I used just a regular brush to apply it all over the surface of the dresser. I tried staining the top of the dresser, but because it was a veneer, I wasn't able to sand it down very much, and therefore the stain did not adhere. It slid around and it was very patchy and not smooth. I did not like the look of it, so I decided that I would have to use some marble contact paper that I had left over from a project, and I just used a card to smooth it over. This process is tedious and you do have to be very careful that you remove all the air bubble. I was able to pull back some of the contact paper when there was air bubble and smooth it over, but it still had a little bit of air bubbles, which is normal for contact paper, but once I brought the furniture indoor, it was barely noticeable that it had those air bubbles. I decided to use the old hardware and handles of my dresser and just clean them up a little bit because they had dirt from throughout the age I've been collecting. You can see here that they're very dark and they look worn out. So I went ahead and put some water on in a pan, and I added 1 cup of white vinegar. So this is gonna help remove all that debris that has built up during the age. So I went ahead and I poured the cup into the water, and I placed the handles in the pot. I let this boil for a couple of minutes. I did notice them brighten up after a couple minutes of boiling, and I removed them from the hot water and I placed them in cold water in my sink just to let the metal cool down before I handle them. I used a steel wool to scrub and remove all of the debris. As I was scrubbing, I did notice that the handles were getting a lot lighter, and you can see here the before and after. So the handles are a lot more shiny, more gold. They look brand new.